In Iraq, north of Mosul, a small but determined group of Christian fighters holds off the militants of the Islamic State.
In the Gulf of Guinea, piracy is on the rise, but the navies of Nigeria and 3 other countries are preparing for the threat.
And look out, Holly in Nollywood. In Uganda, a man making movies on a shoestring budget is being called Africa's Quentin Tarantino. Africa 54 starts right now. Hello, welcome. I'm Vincent McCory, Voice of America, coming to you from our global headquarters in Washington.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Arre at Channels Television here in Lagos. We begin in Iraq, north of Mosul, and face-to-face with Islamic State is a tiny pocket of bombed and abandoned Christian villages. But there's one village that is still occupied. Sharon Ben of the VOA spoke with a determined group of Christian fighters defending their part of Iraq and the 2 Americans helping them.
There are only about 50 Christian fighters here in this village, holding the line against Daesh, the Islamic State extremists. Dan is from Michigan, a veteran of the Iraq War in 2005-2006. Dan says he returned to help.
I came here to, well, hopefully help take Mosul back and push Daesh out of Iraq.
Islamic State fighters constantly probe the front line here. Kurdish Peshmerga forces are nearby, but the Christian militia say they won't leave.
This is our land. We have to protect it. We have to keep it from Daesh's hands because this is our motherland, and we have to protect all the lands to get our people back to their homes.
They lack equipment and experience, but they're determined to stay and fight.
Because they are my brothers, we are Christians, so we can get our land back because so people they can get to their home.
Many of these militia are not trained fighters, but they're afraid if they leave, they'll lose their land.
These are regular people. Some of these people have regular jobs. They come out here, they're trying to save their homeland. I'm here to help.
Sharon Bain, VOA News in Nineveh, Iraq.
Well, Syrian government forces, backed by Russian air support, recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra from Islamic militants last week. The UNESCO World Heritage Site had been held by Islamic State militants since last May, and mass graves have been found. But as VOA's Rosanne Skubble reports, experts say the city itself is actually in better shape than had been expected.
Syrians call Palmyra the Pearl of the Desert. It contains the monumental ruins of a great city at the crossroads of several civilizations from the 1st to the 2nd century. Over the last 10 months, ISIS has looted graves, plundered antiquities, and dynamited shrines and temples in what the United Nations has called a war crime. With the city back in Syrian hands, a restoration team is ready to begin rebuilding, says Mamoun Abdul Karim, who heads Syrian's Antiquities and Museums Directorate.
We have huge capabilities and expertise in the General Directorate of Antiquities and Museums. We have already executed tens of restoration works in Palmyra. We have the experience to accomplish this.
UNESCO, the UN's cultural and heritage body, will meet later this week to determine the next steps. Abdul Karim expects the Syrian government to take strong precautionary measures to prevent Palmyra from falling back into militant hands.
We expected the worst because of the liberation fighting, but I think the nightmare is over. The panoramic picture of Palmyra is fine.
The Antiquities chief has pledged to restore the damaged monuments. He's calling on the international community to stand with Syria in this cultural battle. Rosanne Skubble, VOA News, Washington.
Far from Syria and Iraq in the Gulf of Guinea, pirates have their eyes on oil-related shipping. To address the threat, the navies of Nigeria and 3 other countries conducted a joint exercise codenamed Operation Obangame Express. Our channel's report is from Imanijo Adenoyi, as voiced by Henry Ogunjimi.
Since 2009, this yearly multinational maritime exercise seeks to build relationships between navies of most African nations and those of the US, France, and other EU participating nations. On board this vessel for this year's Obangame exercise are navies from different countries in the Gulf of Guinea, all out to ensure the safety in its waters. The crew reenacts a series of exercises on the Awunde Code of Conduct, a non-binding international agreement that lays down the standards which participating countries should follow. 32 different nations and international organizations from 4 continents participated in the visit, search, arrest, rescue, seizure, maintenance, security, and surveillance exercises, including the tactical measures in reclaiming hijacked ships from pirates. U.S. Africa Deputy Commander for Regional Operations, Vice Admiral Michael Franken, and the Flag Officer commanding Eastern Naval Command, Rear Admiral Atiku Abubakar, speak on the exercise.
There can be no rogue activity at sea, and therefore we want to encourage that the Gulf of Guinea nations, and we've seen this in the past, a continuous improvement process as the Gulf of Guinea nations and the various ministries within each country share the best practices and the necessary tenets for good commerce between themselves. So the United States is only here as an international partner.
We're developing our capacities, and it has come out very clearly during the exercise. Aside from that, it affords us to see how our equipments can operate, how equipments from other countries with Nigeria can operate together and be effective in provision of maritime security.
For the men of the Nigerian Navy, more can still be achieved if more vessels are deployed.
For now, we bought houseboats in order to ensure that we have our men at choke points in the Niger Delta. So there's always we can easily react to any issue of piracy or kidnapping within the creeks. 3
Nigerian ships, NNS Centenary, NNS Okpabana, and NNS Prosperity, and an helicopter participated.
Well, as sub-Saharan Africa develops economically, much of the progress is being carried on the backs of children. Child labor is rampant on the continent, and governments face a big challenge in trying to control it. But as viewers Jeffrey Young reports, the problem appears to be growing in some places.
As sub-Saharan Africa strives to break the shackles of poverty, its population of nearly 1 billion people is hard at work. A 2014 report by the U.S. Department of Labor concluded that 1 out of 5 sub-Saharan children are working under difficult, if not squalid, conditions. In a Skype interview from South Africa, the International Labor Organization's Alex Soho said poverty is the driving force behind child labor.
They are poor, the income is low, they cannot afford hiring adult labor, so they have to rely on the work, of their kids. This is true for farmers. This is true also for farm workers who have to take along with them, into the plantations. In particular, the whole family, to complete the task they've been assigned.
For these children, daily life consists of more than just back-breaking labor. Hazardous, dangerous conditions are commonplace, not just on the farm where machinery meant to be run by adults poses threats to children and pesticides abound, but also in mining, where conditions are sometimes abominable. Day after day, children stand in muddy creeks and rivers scouring the water for specks of gold dust. There are dangers everywhere. Machinery, man-sized or bigger rocks, hazardous chemicals, and waterborne diseases. Another sub-Saharan African industry dependent on child labor is cocoa, used in the production of chocolate. That U.S. Labor Department report said child labor is prevalent on cocoa plantations in Cameroon, Ghana, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. In 2 other nations, Ivory Coast and Nigeria, it's not only the children are working, they are being forced to work. What's worse, The use of children in the cocoa industry is increasing. A study by Tulane University found that the number of children working in the cocoa industry in 2013 and 2014 was 51% higher than 5 years earlier. The Tulane report said 1.4 million sub-Saharan African children were working in the cocoa industry in 2014. An organization representing the industry says families, not corporations, are mainly responsible for the growth of child labor. Nick Wetherill speaks for the International Cocoa Initiative.
More than 99.5% of child labor that exists is taking place on the family farm, and therefore the much more extreme and definitely concerning end of trafficking and kids working in indentured labor, that's less than 0.5%. It's still a phenomenon, it's still real, but it's principally driven by criminality. It is not driven by industry, corporate business practices.
Anti-child labor activists in the United States are trying to use the courts to confront the chocolate industry. Lawsuits pending in California state courts against Hershey, Mars, and Nestle are asking for money for residents who bought chocolate. State law requires candy makers to declare on product packages that child slavery was involved in their making. The ILO's Alex Soho says working is an obstacle to a child's long-term economic advancement.
This work deprives the child of education and obviously of a future, because if the child cannot go to school, the child cannot have a future at all. And this is why the measures taken by the ILO and other partners, to support national stakeholders, focus on education.
Alex Soho and others say keeping kids in school and helping families pull themselves out of poverty are the keys to helping the people of Africa achieve the kind of growth they need to improve their position in the global marketplace. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. All coming up, the recent heat wave in Nigeria, unusual for this time of the year, how to cope with it, and what's going on. Coming up after the break.